I'm obsessed
Yeah.
with genealogy,
Yeah.
and I watch shows like Finding Your Roots with
Yep.
Henry Louis Gates,
Yep.
and he has a large number of African Americans that he works with, and it's heartbreaking to see how
Yes.
few of them can actually trace their
Correct.
specific ancestors. But when they can, the profound healing that you witness when
Absolutely.
they go, oh, these are my people, and
Absolutely.
just knowing the story. Do you have any experience with that?
I do. Actually, I do. My family did our own genealogy. It's very interesting. We did this in 2011. I remember because I was engaged. We did it in 2011, and I had took my fiance onto our family reunion. We had it in we had it in Kansas City actually that year. And we took the eldest member on my maternal side of my family, so it was my mother's side of the family. We took the eldest member. We did one of those 23andMe type things. We swabbed them, sent it off, and then we revealed the results once everybody got together for the family reunion. And the results were startling. We were like, wow. We were like, we had a bunch of different divisions of all these places in Africa. But the two highest populations we had 30% Irish, which is interesting. My last name is Jones. So I don't know if that had something to do with it or not. But we had 30% Irish. And then we had, it was like 48% Ethiopian, or what that of that region of that northern eastern part of Ethiopia. That's where our lineage just kind of popped up on that, which is very fascinating because most slaves actually came from the western horn of Africa. So it's very interesting to know. It's like, wow, this is a part of our history that we don't even know about, but we might have some Ethiopian in our family and not have any clue about it. So what we did was we took those two populations of the Irish and the Ethiopian, and we tried to celebrate some part of those cultures and not immerse ourselves, but just acknowledge that that is a part of who we are as Black folks. We do know that we have slavery in our history because of the narratives that have been shared throughout generations about it. My great grandmother actually was born a sharecropper, and her father and her mother were actually slaves, and she had a native mother. She comes from Oklahoma. They were actually slaves. And my great grandmother was actually a domestic until the day she died. So this is just things that have happened over and over and over again. My grandfather, he has slavery in his history. He's by way of Mississippi. My grandfather, my great grandfather and great grandmother met in a place called Danville, Illinois, where they migrated up north so he could work in a factory till the factories closed, and then they migrated up to the Twin Cities, where I'm actually at now, in Minnesota. So that's kind of a little bit of my lineage and my history and what we know. One thing that's important that you stated about the Henry Louis Gates program is that when people find that identity out, it's very profound. And the reason for that, and one of my concepts I call it the universal goal. And I say that everyone seeks three things. We all seek security, we all seek significance, and we all seek belonging. And when you're able to identify, even if it's one place or multiple places where your lineage starts, you get that feeling of belongingness that unfortunately a lot of African American folks don't have because we were born without documentation a lot of the times. We were given names. We were told who to be and how to be, what to worship, and who to worship, what to eat. We were given these things. We weren't able to define those things for ourselves. So that was a huge thing. That's a huge thing for people to say, oh, wow, my family comes from this region of Kenya or this region of Somalia or this region of Nigeria. To say those things is very profound because it gives us that significance. It highlights why we matter. It gives us that security, which is just that comfort of, wow, I do have a place in this world, and it starts from this region. And then it gives us belonging to know that we are connected to something besides being from Detroit or being from Memphis or being from New Orleans or being from Oakland. We are actually from places around this world, and it gives us a more globalized kind of connection to the world and society that we live in.
Right, right. And then also by doing this research, you learn the stories of at least those ancestors who can be traced, whose stories can be
Mm-hmm.
told. So you can recognize both the good and the bad, and you can sort of
Absolutely.
expand on the good stories and understand that perhaps you've inherited patterns from the people who didn't fare so well.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And it also highlights the curiosity that you have too, because when we got that 30% German result, or not German, Irish results, we were just like, wow, who is the Irish? Like, where did that come from? But again, it highlights the history of African American folks. We've always been interbred and interconnected with other groups. Like, this is just the experience. One of the things that I talk about is that African American folks, we are really like a GMO people. Like we were actually we were bred like horses and dogs and animals. It's unfortunate to compare us to that, but that's literally what we were. We were property, and we were bred. Slavery ended in 1865, right? But the importing of slavery happened in 1808 or 1806. So we had almost 60 years of not importing Africans to become slaves. So what happened was we had breeding farms. So they actually bred African American people to become who we are today. So we didn't have this kind of ushering in to a society on our own terms. We were actually conditioned to be the who and how we are today, which is a very important part of our narrative as well. So to be able to find out that genealogy is very important because it does help highlight your history and where you come from.
Mm-hmm. So then in your work, do you ever work with people who were either adopted or just simply don't have any idea who their ancestors might be?
Absolutely. You see a lot of the similarities between that. Yes, I do a lot of work with, I do a lot of work with adolescents. That's kind of my jam, we say. It's kind of my jam. And a lot of the adolescents I work with come from like foster care or adoption as well. So I get a good population of that. And you see a lot of the similarities where they don't have those connections to their biological parents and some of the things and struggles that they end up having. There's actually a mental health diagnosis called reactive attachment disorder. And that's something that you see with a lot of folks who are either adopted or have been in foster care. They show a lot of symptomologies from reactive attachment disorder. So the inability to trust a lot of people or make friendships, self-regulation becomes a problem. A lot of different attachment issues. Trust is a huge issue for them. Mood regulation. These are all things that people end up dealing with when they go through foster care, not having that direct connection to their biological parents. Yes.
Okay. So then if we look again at the big picture, comparing patterns from back then to the way that people are still living and not even realizing they're just spinning out the same story over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you begin with, I guess, recognizing that might be happening and then healing that?
Yeah. So typically what I begin with, usually when I work with somebody within the first 4 sessions, we do something called a genogram. And a genogram is like, it's like a mock of a family tree. So we start with the individual and we just kind of work our way up as far as the person can go up the family tree. And it's very interesting when I do genograms with my African-American clients versus with my non-African-American clients, how those genograms actually form. A lot of African-American folk genograms don't go that far because they've lost those narratives. And then that's a place to start having those conversations. Well, why don't you know what happened to your grandfather or what happened to this uncle? And what's this person's name and where did they come from? So you start to help them kind of map out their own lineage as best as they can. And when they can't do it, then I give them, in therapy, we like to give a lot of homework. So I give them a homework assignment to talk to some of the elders in their family to figure out a little bit about their family history so they know who they are and who they come from and where they come from. And unfortunately, a lot of people just don't have that opportunity. Yeah.
Right. So I hate to keep repeating myself, but because this is such a big issue, it affects such a huge segment of the population of the United States. And can African Americans actually heal from the past of slavery?
Absolutely. I believe that it's definitely possible. In the work that I do, I don't talk about being healed because the pain, unfortunately, for a lot of people, and it's just not historical trauma pain, it's just pain in general. Sometimes pain doesn't heal. Sometimes it shifts and feels different depending on where you are in your life. So what I like to talk about is healing as this process, as this kind of ongoing thing that will be a part of your journey. So I talk a lot about your healing journey. It's actually, my upcoming book's going to be called Your Healing Journey. So what I believe is that you can heal from particular things, but it will feel different. And if you gain skills, understanding, if you gain, techniques and things that can calm and ground yourself, it will help make things a lot less painful. Unfortunately, the history that African-American folks have dealt with in the United States is so vast that pain is going to be there. The racial tension is unfortunately there. Can we eradicate it? Absolutely, but it has to be a collective effort with everybody who's in the United States, which is a hard thing to do, is to get everybody on board to be more inclusive and respectful and understanding and acknowledge the pain that has happened. But for African American folks in particular, we have to understand that it is a journey to healing, and we have to own a piece of our own healing and not expect everyone around us to heal first. We have to we have to be proactive, take action to make sure that our healing is important for us, and not worry about if anyone else is going to respect it. Because at the end of the day, and this is just in therapy in general, at the end of the day, it's about how you feel about yourself, what tools and techniques you have to keep yourself, grounded in a well state, and make sure that you're living a healthy life.